They say prayer brings peace, but that night, peace never came. Hannah was on her knees in the corner of her room, the Bible open beside her, moonlight spilling through the half-drawn curtain. Her tears wet the pages as she whispered words that felt heavier than her chest could carry. Lord, will anyone ever love me for me? Not her glow, not her beauty, not her curves, not her smile in public, just her. The room was quiet, too quiet. Only the ticking clock reminded her that time was moving, even though she felt stuck. And when no answer came, she laid her head on the bed and cried herself to sleep. Little did she know, the silence was not God ignoring her. It was God preparing her. Hannah's beauty was her blessing, but sometimes it felt like her curse. Everywhere she went, eyes followed her. At the market, men turned heads. At church, whispers followed her steps. On the street, stares lingered like shadows, but none of those eyes ever looked deep enough to see the woman behind the glow. Hannah often asked herself, do they even see me? Or do they only see what they can take from me? She smiled in public. She laughed when expected. But deep inside, loneliness was her loudest companion. The glow was bright, but the soul beneath it was fading. The last man Hannah dated was everything people prayed for, at least in public. Tall, handsome. He prayed loud in church. He opened doors for her in restaurants. People called him the perfect man. But behind closed doors, he didn't want Hannah. He wanted the trophy. He wanted the glow, not the storms. He wanted the presence, not the person. One evening, Hannah stood in his living room, tears burning her eyes as he scrolled through his phone, barely listening. Do you even hear me? She whispered. He didn't look up. That was her answer. She picked her bag, walked out, and closed the door behind her. That night, Hannah learned leaving hurts, but staying where you are unseen hurts even more. After him, Hannah buried herself in ministry. She smiled at church, prayed with people, served wherever she was needed. But the truth, her service was full. Her heart was empty. She would return home, collapse on her bed, and whisper, Lord, why does it feel like I'm shining outside, but dying inside? It is possible to serve God publicly while fighting shadows privately. Daniel didn't come with fireworks. He came quietly. They met at a small gathering, nothing special. But he noticed things others never did. He listened when she spoke. He laughed, not at her beauty, but at her jokes. He remembered details others forgot. For the first time in years, Hannah felt seen. Her heart skipped. Could this be different? For the first time in a long time, Hannah smiled, without faking it. But safety is tricky. When you've been betrayed too many times, even safety feels suspicious. Hannah pulled back, tested Daniel. Sometimes she built walls so high even she couldn't climb them. What if he's like the others? She thought. What if this ends the same way? Daniel stayed patient, but Hannah wrestled with herself. Sometimes the hardest battle is not with people. It is with the fear inside your own chest. They say real love is not loud. It is consistent. Daniel didn't bring her flowers every day. He didn't shower her with endless promises. Instead, he listened. He remembered. He showed up. When Hannah mentioned once that she loved mangoes, the next week he surprised her with a bag full, ripe and sweet. When she was too tired to talk, he sat beside her in silence, not demanding words. And when she laughed, he laughed louder. Not because the joke was funny, but because her joy lit something in him. For the first time in a long time, Hannah began to believe maybe, just maybe, this was different. But sometimes, even consistency feels fragile when your heart is carrying old wounds. Hannah had a habit. At night, when the world was quiet, she wrote in her journal, page after page. She poured her fears. Lord, what if he leaves like the others? What if he only sees my body, not my soul? What if I am too broken to be loved? The more Daniel showed kindness, the more Hannah wrestled with the voice in her head that whispered, don't trust too much. Don't hope too far. One night, she tore a page out of her journal and threw it away. But even the torn paper on the floor seemed to scream back at her. When you've been broken too often, even hope feels like a dangerous gamble. Daniel had a way of making ordinary moments feel special. One Saturday, he invited Hannah to a quiet outing. Not the usual restaurants, not the fancy scenes, just a small roadside spot where roasted fish and cold drinks were sold. They sat, laughed, talked about everything and nothing. Hannah realized she hadn't felt this free in years. At one point, she caught herself staring at him, wondering, Lord, am I safe here? Or am I just dreaming again? She didn't have the answer yet, but for the first time, she wanted to believe. Then came the letter. It was an invitation, 3 months of intense spiritual training, a program that could sharpen Hannah's gift, deepen her calling, and prepare her for greater purpose. Her heart beat fast as she read it. This was what she had been praying for. This was the next step. But in the corner of her heart, another voice rose. What about Daniel? She held the letter close to her chest, praying, but her spirit already knew. Choosing destiny would come at a cost. Sometimes the blessings you prayed for test the love you thought you found. Hannah told Daniel about the training, expecting him to smile, to support her, to say, I'm proud of you. But instead, his words pierced her chest. 3 months? That's too long. What about us? What about me? Hannah froze. The me in his sentence echoed like thunder. This wasn't about her calling. It wasn't about supporting her growth. It was about him losing access. Tears filled her eyes. She tried to explain, but his face was set, his arms folded. That night, Hannah walked home with a heart heavier than ever. Sometimes a single sentence is enough to reveal the truth you were afraid to see. Hannah couldn't sleep that night. She sat on the floor, suitcase open, clothes half packed, tears streaming down her face. Her Bible lay beside her, her journal in her lap. Lord, she whispered, do I choose him, or do I choose you? The silence in the room felt like an answer, so she zipped her suitcase. Her heart broke, but her spirit felt steady. She wrote one last line in her journal before closing it. If love makes me choose between God and a man, it was never love in the first place. And with that, Hannah chose her destiny over her heart. The morning Hannah left Abuja, the sky felt heavier than usual. She didn't wait for Daniel. She didn't send a long message. She only left a simple line, I choose God. At the bus station, the noise of conductors and travelers filled the air, but Hannah heard none of it. She stood there, suitcase in hand, eyes blurry with tears. When the bus finally pulled away, she didn't look back. Some goodbyes don't need closure. They only need courage. That day, Hannah's heart broke, but her destiny opened. The road stretched long, dust rising from the tires as the bus carried her away from everything familiar. Hannah leaned her head on the window, the glass cool against her cheek. Her reflection stared back at her, strong but fragile, glowing but broken. Memories of every man she had ever loved flashed like short films in her mind. The promises, the lies, the smiles, the betrayals. And then she whispered to her own reflection, Lord, I choose you, even if it means walking alone. Sometimes peace doesn't look like laughter. Sometimes it looks like tears on a moving bus. When Hannah arrived at the training camp, it was nothing like she imagined. No luxury, no comfort, just simple dormitories, shared rooms, and people from across the country all hungry for God. The first night, she sat in the hall, surrounded by strangers lifting their hands in worship. Something inside her stirred. For the first time in months, her tears weren't for heartbreak. They were for healing. She came searching for strength, but what she found first was rest. The third night of the program changed Hannah forever. As the worship rose, Hannah fell to her knees. Her chest ached, not from loneliness this time, but from release. She wept deep, loud, uncontrollable tears. Years of betrayal, fear, rejection, all breaking off her soul. Others prayed over her, but Hannah barely heard them. She was lost in God's embrace. That night, Hannah realized healing is not forgetting. Healing is surrendering the pain into hands bigger than yours. In the weeks that followed, Hannah sometimes wrote letters to Daniel, not to send, just to release. Daniel, I wish you understood my calling. Daniel, I wish love wasn't this hard. Daniel, I forgive you, but I cannot stay. Each letter ended the same way. Lord, heal him too. One night, she burned one of the letters. Watching the flames swallow the paper felt like watching God erase her last tie to him. Sometimes closure doesn't come from people. It comes from fire. By the second month, Hannah was no longer the same woman who arrived. She prayed with boldness. She taught with clarity. She led worship with fire. People looked at her and saw grace she didn't even know she carried. Her heart was still healing, yes, but her spirit was stronger than ever before. She began to realize maybe the loneliness wasn't punishment. Maybe it was preparation. Her scars were still there, but they no longer defined her. One afternoon, Hannah saw a couple sitting under a tree, laughing, feeding each other. Her chest tightened. For a moment, the old ache returned. She thought of Daniel, of what could have been, and for the last time, she cried for him, not because she wanted him back, but because she finally accepted it was over. When the tear fell, she wiped it with her hand, whispered never again. That was the last tear she ever shed for him. By the end of the 3 months, Hannah had changed. No, she didn't have a new man waiting for her. No, the loneliness hadn't completely disappeared. But for the first time in her life, she was at peace. On the last night of the program, Hannah sat by her window, looking at the stars. She whispered, "Lord, I'll wait. I'll wait for the one who loves me the way you do. Until then, teach me to love myself enough not to settle." Her heart still ached. The road ahead was still uncertain, but her spirit was calm, because she had finally learned the love worth having never makes you choose between your destiny and your heart. And with that, Hannah stepped into the next season of her life not with a man's hand in hers, but with God's peace in her heart. Sometimes, God allows people to walk away, not because you aren't worthy, but because your worth is too great to be wasted in the wrong hands. Real love will never make you shrink, beg, or choose between your heart and your destiny. If you feel unseen, remember He sees you. If you feel unloved, remember He loves you. And if you feel like you've been walking alone, remember healing often begins in the lonely places. Stay strong. Don't settle. Don't rush. The love worth having will meet you where God is taking you. If this story touched your heart, don't keep it to yourself. Subscribe, share, and let's keep spreading stories that heal, inspire, and remind us we are never alone.